Well, hi everybody. It's meteorologist Joe Chaffee. Welcome to tonight's Joe Chaffee Weather Show. It is coming up on 7:30 Eastern Time on the 1st of May. And if he's watching, I got to say hi to my buddy Richie from the cigar store. Hi, Richie. He is just downloaded my weather app, and he's so excited because he was playing my videos this morning in the cigar store that I go to on an occasional basis, Freddy's, and well, I'm happy that he's happy, and good. Hope everybody had a great day. Got a lot going on this Wednesday. We're going to take a look at this ridiculous pattern that has kept the East locked in to doom and gloom, particularly the Northeast. The Southeast has been great with respect to the weather that's been going on because of that nice little ridge that's built up the East Coast. But unfortunately for the Northeast, the blocking pattern, the cold air that is spread out across Canada bleeds southward, and you got this frontal boundary that just kind of sits there and has been sitting there all week, and is going to probably sit there for another 5 or 6 days before maybe it finally gets out of the way. What we really need is one good solid low development to come along and just clean house around here, but that doesn't seem to be in the cards at the moment. So I thought I'd start off with the upper air pattern the way it stands. And bring it up here. This always takes me a moment to just kind of switch everything around. There you go. So here we have this is what the upper air looks like right now. Actually, this is for 24 hours from now, but close enough. And we have the obvious players, of course, on there, and that is first and foremost is the blocking high, and it is right up here, sitting right over Greenland, just kind of a wedge there, separating two important upper lows. One that is east of Newfoundland, which is kind of at what we usually look for the upper lows to be at 50 degrees north and 50 degrees west. That is a spot where upper lows will park themselves in a blocking situation. You've got another strong upper low out in the west in northern Canada, right along about roughly about 110 degrees west, with an extending trough into the Rockies. We have our upper ridge in the east, and of course this is creating a southwest flow of warm air, and the problem is that the block has cool Canadian air at the low levels of the atmosphere, and that low level cool air is penetrated down fairly far to the south. You get these little short waves that rotate around, the front buckles. Sometimes it comes to the north as a warm front, sometimes it drops back south as a cold front, and well, this is what we've been going through for the last number of days, and we're going to continue to go through. In fact, I'm just going to jump to a week from now, okay, just to show you where things are just in the next 7 days, how much or how little progress we're going to make in all of this. And when we take a look at the upper air in that time frame, as we move on ahead, it is not exactly promising at this point, or at least through the middle part of next week, because your block is still in place. Actually, the upper high moves a bit westward toward northern Labrador. You do have a weakening of the vortex out in the Atlantic. There's an open trough here. You have a trough that is moving out of the Rockies and into the plains. The upper low up in Canada is gone, and you're starting to get a ridge building up just off the west coast. So perhaps after next week, the middle of next week, if we can get this upper high to break down and start a more normalized flow of traffic across the United States, we might see a general change. But this is taking us pretty much through next week. So we're talking May 9th and 10th is next Thursday and Friday. So we got more work to do in order before we get there. And as we mentioned, in the springtime, blocks sometimes don't like to break down as quick as you think. They hang around for a while, and the models like to break them down, and then as each day goes by, it takes longer and longer and longer. And going forward after this, you still have some vestiges of it going out to day 9, sitting between Labrador and Greenland, although at least the traffic across the United States is moving to a large degree. We do have some kind of trough on the GFS around days 8 and 9 moving into eastern Canada, so that at least would bring a cold front through and move things along. Look, you're going to get rain in the spring, and you're going to probably, in a normalized pattern, you're going to get rain every 2 or 3 days. I can live with that. It's at least in those 2 days in between. If we can have some sunshine in there, then I'm okay with it. But the problem is that when you're dealing with situations that create this onshore flow, which it's just murder. You can't buy a nice day, and you're dealing with these fronts. Just on a close-up view here, let's just go to my neck of the woods just to show you what the problem is. And I will start with tonight and into tomorrow morning. Okay, so here's tonight. This is for this evening. I'll bring the paint box back up front and center so we can take a look at this. And hang on. This is the surface map. I'm going really, really tight here on the northeast U.S. All right, so there's our surface. So right now, what do we got? Well, we have a low that's sitting over Lake Ontario, and if I want to be generous, I'm going to draw the warm front here, and the warm front, kind of runs without looking at the temperatures. I'm just going with the isobars. So the warm front sort of looks like this. You've got a trailing cold front here. This is another wave, another low that's buckled on that frontal boundary. So you're going to get this warm front that is going to try and come through. Then I'll move it forward. So we'll go to tomorrow around mid-afternoon. And at least in the world that the GFS lives in, it actually does try to push this warm front through. If you draw it the way the map is, it runs out somewhere into southeastern New England and offshore, so that Long Island, Connecticut, even into Rhode Island get into some of the warm air. I have my doubts about this as far as that the GFS's extent of doing it. But the point is that the warm front buckles north. Now we've got this cold front that's going to come on through. Again, this is for the middle of tomorrow afternoon. Now I'm going to move over to Friday morning when we have the next wave that is going by. And here it is Friday morning now. And what's happened in the interim is that we've seen the... you know what? I'm going to just clean this up and give me a little more space to work with. So, okay. So here's Friday morning's map. So now that cold front that I showed you on the last one, it moved through and it now moves back to the south, stalls out, and now we've got another weak wave of low pressure moving into western PA, and that cold front has now become a warm front, or at the very least a stationary front, and it's going to want to move up to the northeast. There's a trailing cold front with this low. And, I mean, this has been the story. It's day after day after day, just watching these weather fronts just kind of buckling back and forth. And you know what? It's fine and dandy if they're happening someplace other than over me, where I have the daily forecast dilemma of dealing with this stuff. And it makes for a big deal here tomorrow. I got to figure out a temperature range that could be in a span of about 60 or 70 miles. One side could be at about 50 to 55, and the other side may wind up being close to 80. So such is life, and we get through all this. And what happens after that? Well, that front's going to go by and stall, and we're going to get another wave. This one actually looks to be a bit of a stronger wave coming out for Saturday and Saturday night into early Sunday, and that ruins the weekend for a good chunk of the northern mid-Atlantic and the Northeast, at least up into southern and central New England, getting into some rain. And then finally on Monday, glory hallelujah, this is where at least we could squeeze out a decent day of weather here before another front approaches Monday night. GFS seems to want to get it hung up a bit. I haven't really looked at the new model, not bringing this front through here, having more of a southwest flow. That would kind of imply that things might be okay on Tuesday, might be not only halfway decent, but warmer before that front goes by. And anyway, the bottom line is I'm trying to get at least one nice day or a day and a half, and maybe Monday and Tuesday of next week might be the time frame. So let's go back to the current surface map, and we'll show you what's going on. First off, in my area in the Northeast, look at how the surface is analyzed tonight. Where you've got a surface low in Lake Huron, this snaking warm front moving into western New York, western PA. You have temperatures into the 80s in Ohio and West Virginia and western Pennsylvania. You've got temperatures in the low to mid 50s over New Jersey, Long Island, and southern New England. There is a boundary there, folks, no doubt. And that front snakes down, analyzed actually as a weak cold front in northern Virginia into a little low off the Jersey coast. There's no real weather with it. And then, of course, you've got warm cold. So it's a little low on a stationary boundary, becomes a warm front as it moves up into western PA. Overnight, this whole thing is going to come up back to the north. So keep your fingers crossed that it makes it like the GFS and it goes all the way to Rhode Island and southeastern New England so that we could see warmer temperatures and some sunshine tomorrow for at least part of the day. And we're going to probably start out with some low clouds and some fog. And at this moment, some fog is beginning to develop in my area. In the meantime, dew points in the 50s, temperatures in the mid-80s across much of the southeast and the Tennessee Valley, back through the Gulf states. You start to get into those dew points in the mid and upper 60s, and then of course you head up into Texas and Arkansas, and you've got 70s and low 80s and dew points in the upper 60s and low 70s, and that's where our severe weather is for the second night in a row. This is SPC's mesoscale analysis, and right now that is the real-time radar over a real-time surface. The blue boxes are the current working severe thunderstorm watches that are up as of 7:42 p.m. So if you're watching this on a replay, it's dated. This is from 7:42 p.m. Eastern Time. You can get your local updated maps by going to weather.gov for the latest. And in fact, this is probably a good time for me to find where I have that. There we go, my risk map. So let's bring up the risk map here. All right. Oh, come on, really? No. Is this it? Yep, there it is. So there's our risk from the Storm Prediction Center. An enhanced risk of severe weather across much of North Texas tonight, a bigger area of slight risk going into Arkansas and northwest Louisiana, and then extending back over back in Texas, and that larger area of marginal risk that sort of meanders its way up the Ohio River and toward eastern Ohio, western Pennsylvania, and on up into western New York. You can see that there's a narrow line of storms there, and a small area of marginal risk indicated in northern Virginia. I don't see anything on the radar at the moment up in that area, but at least from the standpoint of what's going on in Texas, where we have those severe thunderstorm watches, the storms on the radar, they're blowing up rather impressively late this afternoon into this evening, and the line looks like, the storms look like they're still expanding. We also have some showers down near the coast, and they're not doing very much. And in that marginal risk of severe weather, you can see that there are some scattered thunderstorms. And there's actually a hefty-looking line here that's moving across central Tennessee into northwestern Alabama. And then some scattered downpours and thunderstorms running up through Ohio and just about getting ready to move into northwestern Pennsylvania and on up into western New York State. Risk areas for tomorrow, slight risk of severe weather. Two areas, one down in Texas, the other one from southeastern Missouri, northeastern Arkansas, northeastward into southwest Ohio, northern Kentucky, southern Indiana, southern Illinois. And marginal risk actually gets to about the New Jersey-Pennsylvania line. Now, the only thing I'll say out of this is that if that warm front winds up, if you look where SPC's got the arrow there that runs from western New York into the Hudson Valley and across Long Island. So you could that's where SPC probably visualizes where the warm front gets, the northeasternmost extent of the warm front. If you want to make the case that the GFS is right and the warm front winds up pushing more into Rhode Island or southeastern Massachusetts, then I would say that you might see that marginal risk of severe weather extended eastward to where to western Connecticut and to Long Island, because the marine layer would effectively be cut off. So that's something I think I'd watch very closely tomorrow morning. I'm going to be watching very closely to see how far east that warm front gets. The European and the GFS both want to push that warm front pretty far to the east. The NAM model does not. The NAM model really wants to pinch that in. And the NAM this over the winter and in the spring has had some good success with figuring out the low levels of the atmosphere in terms of these warm fronts and how far north they wind up getting. Yeah, the warm air aloft might get there, but at the lower levels of the atmosphere, you may get that trapped marine layer instead. And then moving on to Friday, we do have another one of these warm front, cold front combinations, but the dynamics for severe weather are, at the moment, don't really look all that impressive. So we're looking at a small area of marginal risk in northern Virginia and into Maryland, and another area of marginal risk down in Texas. Texas has been pretty busy with regards to severe weather this week. I just want to take a look here. Going up into New England right now, we do have some showers going on in parts of Maine, out in the plains, looking at some rain showers moving through parts of South Dakota and Nebraska, and some precip back over into eastern Colorado, mostly rain showers, maybe some snow showers in the higher elevations. Some scattered light activity in Southern California, but much of the west on the quiet side, a little bit of scattered precip there up in the northern Rockies. So let's go forward and take a look at where we're going with all this. And with the upper air first in mind, we do have this this ridge here in the east, which again that's upstairs. It's the low levels are a different story. That ridge actually weakens as we go into the weekend. We do have a short wave here moving across the lower Mississippi Valley and across the south. It weakens as it moves eastward. There's still a definite kink there, but this is not a very, very strong short wave. So I think that probably argues against any kind of widespread severe weather outbreak going on with this low that is moving into the east on Sunday. And then after that, of course, the ridge comes back, and you start to wonder, are we going to have the same setup here later next week where you're going to have some kind of frontal boundary? You still have a bit of a flow in Canada. If you look up in the upper right, you can't really see it, but there's an upper low that's sitting out in the Maritimes. So there's probably higher pressures that are trying to bleed down cool air into the northeast, while you've got this upper ridge building and a bit of a shortwave trough that comes out of the west and swings eastward for later next week. So there probably will be more weather systems to deal with after Monday, Tuesday, and maybe finally by the end of next week, if this is correct, where you get some kind of deeper trough in the east to sort of force a cold front to come through and just clean everything out. And even though it'll be cool air for the weekend of, say, the 11th and 12th, no guarantees, we're just kind of speculating here openly. But if we can get something like this to just move on through and just keep going, we could see some genuine improvement that lasts more than 24 hours. And that's kind of what I'm hoping for. Keeping my fingers crossed that that happens. Okay, surface the way this plays out. And of course, with all these, the absence of any kind of major system, you've got all these weak systems running around. There's only so much you can do with them as far as with regards to what's going to happen. So Thursday, of course, you've got your next round of severe weather potential where we described. You can see where the GFS has it. And the dilemma here in the Northeast with this low and the warm front, cold front, a little bit of patchy rain and snow up in the northern plains and in the northernmost Rockies. And Friday is another repeat performance with another little wave going by, warm front, cold front combination. By the way, keep your eyes on the precip that you see down in the Bahamas and off the Florida coast, as I'm going to get to that in a second. I don't know if David Schwartz is on, but thanks for giving me the heads up. I've been looking at this every day, and today's the one day I forgot to check. And thanks for reminding me. So we'll get to that in a moment. But here you go with regards to Friday, of course. You get this to move out. Now you're going to get this next system in the southern plains. Again, it's a weak short wave. It's just enough of a kink in the upper flow that you've got a weather system to work with, but it's not going to intensify into any kind of major storm. Just low pressure that tries to go up the Appalachians, probably reforms off the New Jersey coast and then out. The problem for my area for the weekend is I don't know how much improvement are you going to get Friday night into Saturday morning. You might get some, but then clouds will be coming back in, and I think by later Saturday afternoon, Saturday night, you're going to get into some rain again, and that rain lasts into Sunday afternoon. But even if it were to get out by midday, the northeast flow that gets established because of where the low is going is probably going to keep things really dismal and gray until later Sunday evening, and then finally Sunday night it clears out, so weather conditions improve on Monday. And now you can see the dilemma for next week. There's a front coming down from the Great Lakes, okay, with another high across the top in Canada that spreads out east-west. That front pushes through, but only gets so far, and now you get the next round of waves that move in, starting on later Tuesday. Actually, even during the day Tuesday, you've got some precip going through upstate New York until the front goes by, and then Tuesday night, Wednesday into Thursday, and of next week, you have this to deal with until finally you get something to swing by and out. Here's that upper trough now that swings by at the end of next week with a cold front and some genuine improvement for the weekend of the 11th and 12th, if you can wait that long, because the weekend, this one coming up, does not look all that good. Now, let's take a look at something that you don't see too often in May, because it's not hurricane season yet, but actually if you go to nhc.noaa.gov, you're going to find, I'm sorry, I apologize, folks. I'm so sorry. I wish there was a way I could see your posts. Now, I did all of that work and you didn't see a thing. Oh, God. I'm horrible. Oh, man. Well, you know what? I'm going to finish the live stream up and then probably take it off the screen tonight because, I just had a feeling now and I feel terrible. Okay, so at least I remembered for this point. So, nhc.noaa.gov. Your tropical weather outlook, when you're outside the hurricane season, they only use this when you wind up having a system out there, because most years you don't. But when you do, and it's something that they decide that it's time to at least pay some attention to, they'll do special tropical weather outlooks. So right now they're doing it once a day. And this was a discussion that they put out as of 9:25 this morning. So again, if you want to go ahead and read this, it's at nhc.noaa.gov. They actually said that little development expected in the next couple of days, but maybe some slow development of the disturbance as it turns northeastward, perhaps because it might interact with the shortwave trough that's moving that'll be moving across the east over the weekend. So they have actually gave it a 20% chance of development. Here's what it looks like on the satellite. And I could kind of see a little bit of twisting in the clouds, believe it or not. There might be some kind of very weak low-level swirl in there sitting somewhere northeast of Cuba. I don't know if it was analyzed that way. I didn't read any of their discussions. I'm just sort of eyeballing this. This has been sitting out here for several days. I think if we were, deep into the hurricane season, this would be something of great interest. Maybe if we were even into mid or late June, it might be something of late interest. I just think that right now it is a bit too early with regards to seeing tropical storm development coming out of this. But hey, we've had May tropical systems on and off over the past few years. So, nothing would shock me. Probably get a better view here on the U.S. satellite. I got to get myself a little sticky note that says, make sure you switch the windows back when you're switching back and forth. Sorry about that. But here's on the tighter view. You can see it a bit better. You can make out Florida. The clouds are still kind of moving just pretty much west to east. There was maybe the tiniest of low-level circulations in there. I might be stretching a point. It could also be just the way the clouds are moving. It just seems that way when it actually isn't. And by the way, let me just bring us to the surface map back up for a moment. Okay, where are you? Where is my window? There we go. So let's go to, I want to just bring up the surface map again. Coming up on almost 8 o'clock Eastern time here. So let's just bring this up. And if you notice, it doesn't go out far enough, but they do analyze. If you look carefully, it's a little hard to see, but there are dashed lines there drawn through the western Bahamas. There is what we call an inverted trough. Just basically, it's an upside down V, okay, where winds are running southeast on one side and northeast on the other, and they create an upside down V, an inverted trough. If you had a regular trough, it would be the reverse. You have northwest winds on one side and southwest winds on the other. The inverted trough is the reverse of that, and you see those inverted troughs. Usually, you see them on the surface, and sometimes what happens is at the bottom of that trough, where the lower pressures are, you get a low-level circulation that develops. And you also see non-tropical inverted troughs, by the way, all the time. Sometimes they set up off the North Carolina coast, and eventually they become the coastal fronts that lows develop out of. That is not an unusual thing. So these sorts of things do happen from time to time. Interesting, like I said, we're at the beginning of May, so it would be a real stretch to see something tropical developing out of this. Although, again, going back in the last 5 or 6 years, I don't know how many we've had, but we have had a couple of May tropical storms that have formed. Okay, so once again, my apologies for that horrible error. Izzy, thanks for hitting Super Chat tonight. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Scott Briller says the CPC in its 8 to 14 day outlook still has our area in the battle zone. Scott, remember, by the way, that back about 2 weeks ago, SPC had things warm and relatively dry. We haven't really gotten a whole ton of rain out of this, but the temperatures have been cool because of the onshore flow. I should point out also that for all the consternation about the weather in the month of April, in my neck of the woods at least, the temperatures have actually been ran above average for the month of April by almost 2.5 to 3 degrees. So we had a warmer than average April, not a cooler than average one. It's just that everybody's got this bent notion that somehow you have to suddenly flip the switch and every day is just going to be beautiful and warm. I know, David. I'm sorry about the maps. I really apologize for this. For that, I've been I try to remember, and I guess I got so worked up in terms of getting my weather discussion in that I forgot to switch off the maps. I really, really apologize. We're lacking instability, Javon Perry. I'm flying to the south for a couple of days just to see thunderstorms. Well, yeah, you will have to, more than likely. There might be some tomorrow night in eastern PA and in western New Jersey. And the severe weather, of course, that's going on down through Texas, that's a no-brainer. But, yeah, right now we seem to have been taking a bit of a break with regards to this. No problem, Johnny Quest. If you go to SPC's site, you were asking about joules, which are a measure of energy, and they use something called the CAPE to calculate, the relative stability and instability. If you dig around, and they also talk about it on their discussions a lot. I'm trying to see if there's some kind of graphic. There probably is somewhere. I'm just not sure where. Here you go. So if you go to mesoscale analysis at spc.noaa.gov, so if you go to the mesoscale analysis and pull up any of the geographies that you have a choice of, run across the choices at thermodynamics, and you can see they have CAPE measurements here that you can put up, and it'll show you, or it's supposed to show you anyway. All right here. So there's your, where you could see the CAPE numbers, and I think it was with respect to CAPE numbers, they try to look for numbers that are like 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 or higher, as far as indicating the relative instability of the atmosphere. So you've got a little bit of action showing up in some of these areas. Now, just always remember that when you look at any of these things, they're not absolutes. You could have the CAPE indicators working for you, and then I've seen it happen up here where we've had numbers that were indicative of severe weather, and then the severe weather, for one reason or another, never really materialized, and in a few instances, even the thunderstorms didn't even really materialize. All right, so I don't do it again. I can bring it up. So Johnny, if you wanted to look at, you go to SPC's site. So this is what it looks like. spc.noaa.gov, and you want to go to the mesoscale analysis. So if you go to this page, right, click on meso analysis. I got the window up, so click on meso analysis. Let's go down. We can get down into Texas here. And then right across the top menu, if you go to thermodynamics, you can put various measures of the CAPE. This is at the surface, and it's got all the numbers plotted out there for you. If you see where the radar is pretty active, you've got some pretty decent CAPE numbers there sitting right overhead. It's a little hard to read, but you get the idea. These are all tools that forecasters use to try to get at least a leg up as far as severe weather development is, and you have to use them carefully and with a grain of salt. But more than happy to help you out with that. Okay, so let's just come back to the board real quick one more time. Izzy, I just showed you the CAPE. I just saw your message pop up, so I assume that you just saw it. In case you missed it one last time, so there we go. So this is at spc.noaa.gov. Go on to meso analysis, pick your geography, and then go to the top menu and click on thermodynamics. And you bring down all these different levels of CAPE that you can look at anytime you would like. All right, so let's just get rid of that. Oh boy. All right. Yes, you're taking it from a more earthly point of view. All right. Let's leave it there. It's 8:04 Eastern Time. Thanks for being here tonight. Really appreciate it. Next time I'll make sure I got my head together a bit better. The Joe Chaffee show tonight at 9:25 on Facebook. That's the plan. Last night we had stuff that came up and we weren't able to do it. So if we do happen to do a show tonight, I will put it up on YouTube right off the bat as soon as I'm done. And if I got enough time, you'll have it up there at about 10 o'clock Eastern time. Otherwise, we'll see you tomorrow. Good night, everybody.